Jesus Luzardo done for the year for the Marlins and for their rotation in particular. It has been a tough season. Sandy Alcantara, 0 innings. Yuri Perez, 0 innings. Jesus Luzardo, just 66 innings. Braxton Garrett also looks to probably be done with 37 innings. 103 innings from the Marlins' top 4 starters. That's why the season's cooked. But Jesus Sanchez is still out here smiling and hitting 480-foot bombs. This is Locked on Marlins, baby.
You are Locked on Marlins, your daily podcast on the Miami Marlins.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings from England and welcome to Locked on Marlins. This is your daily Marlins pod. I am your host, Peter Pratt. Hit me up, of course, at Miami Marlins _UK. Thanks for making Locked on Marlins your first listen of the day. Reminder to hit subscribe. This podcast is available everywhere you get your pods as part of the Locked On Podcast Network. There is also a YouTube channel. Make sure you hit subscribe over on the YouTube channel. Let me know your thoughts as well, particularly on the question of the day, which is, what is the secret sauce? What is the secret sauce for the Marlins attendance? Craig Mish talking about it yesterday on his own show, or I believe anyway. Nevertheless, he was talking about it on some show. I can't even recall if it was his, but he was asked around the Marlins attendance and calling out that they have struggled to consider what the secret sauce is. So we have an annual pod, it seems, where we talk about attendances. So we'll talk about that today, probably. But what we do want to cover is Jesus Luzardo, the news yesterday in advance of the game, the update, the status update on all the injured guys. And Jesus Luzardo is a no-throw at this point, not expected to be throwing at all for 6 weeks, considering there's only 8 weeks left of the year. That effectively is the end of Jesus Luzardo's campaign. Not his best and not what the Marlins wanted from him. So we're going to talk about Luzardo in some more depth and just kind of more generally signposting that this Marlins rotation has been decimated. Will Manso also met with Peter Bendix, a 4-minute-ish interview. Will Manso really got into it in that one, and we're going to talk about that as well for sure. Jesus Sanchez, though, on the positive side, although the Marlins got spanked by the Reds and Ellie De La Cruz, Jesus Sanchez with a 480-foot boom bar. I teased it yesterday. Guys, it's time that Locked on Marlins gave some love to Xavier Edwards. Boy, oh boy, Xavier Edwards is absolutely on fire at the moment. It's under the radar because the Marlins are terrible. No one's looking, no one's watching, no one's talking about it, really. So I'm going to talk about it today. This episode is sponsored by our good friends over at FanDuel, and you can make every moment more as the playoffs wind down. The sports stop sporting like we want them to, but this summer FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone. Every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And where are we starting? We're starting right at the top. I want to talk about Jesus Luzardo firstly. Then there's a few other matters to get into. Attendances. Will Manso talking to Peter Bendix. I want to talk about Jesus Sanchez going crazy. And we're going to wrap things up definitely with a segment on Xavier Edwards. It feels overdue. Let's start with Luzardo. The news yesterday, as I mentioned, the status update. He's going to be a no-throw for at least 6 weeks. Effectively, that's the end of Jesus Luzardo's season. And when we reflect on this season, what could have been, what has been, it's fair to say this is almost been the worst case situation for the Marlins. Reminder, Jesus Luzardo got the ball opening day, was the de facto ace with Sandy not around. I think even if Yuri was healthy, Luzardo would have still gotten the ball. But there were strong rumors in the offseason around a trade. The Marlins were already looking to restock the farm at that moment, etc., etc. We're going to talk about more about that specifically later with Will Manso's conversation with Peter Bendix. But strong rumors, the Marlins were looking to move Luzardo. They tried to get a deal done with the Orioles. They couldn't get it done. Luzardo then comes out and ends up throwing 66 innings in total for the season. Last season was a career year. Most amount of innings he's ever thrown. Lo and behold, you get the unhealthy year that follows that. I think that was always the concern with Luzardo headed into the year, where we've never seen him throw this many before. There's always been injuries with Luzardo. There's injuries with all pitchers at this point. Like, that's why Sandy was just the freak of nature that he has been. Even Sandy's not immune, and that's the challenge. But for Luzardo, this absolutely hasn't been the season that he was looking for. He's going to end his season with just 12 starts, 66 and 2/3 of, well, pretty mediocre production, in that it's a nailed on 5 ERA. From a FIP perspective, it was a little bit more encouraging FIP-wise, with a 4.26 FIP, an ERA plus of 88. So it looks bad. I think it's, still a positive WAR guy. He was 3-6 with a 0.8 WAR on the campaign, and a 1.245 WHIP. It's pretty much in line with his career WHIP. But unfortunately, last year was the career year in many ways, just in terms of innings specifically. 178 innings of work from Luzardo, with a 3.58 ERA and a 3.55 FIP. So he pitched exactly to that, really. So that was, that's the outlier when we look at Luzardo and his career. In 22 with the Marlins, he did, in 18 starts anyway, he did manage just over 100 innings. But that's been his kind of max historically, and then the 178 campaign, and then just littered with injuries throughout 2024. Started the campaign slow, etc., etc. Just fundamentally, just not the year production-wise that Luzardo was looking for. I wonder if there's a few things that play into that. When you're the pressure's on as the ace, there's pressure there. When the team stinks early on in the campaign, there's pressure on there, right? Because everyone's turning to Jesus Luzardo. This is pretty much the same roster as last year. There were some favorable bounces. Yes, we get that. They didn't replace Soler, Berger, and Bell, blah, blah, blah. But overall, they came out of the chute stone cold. Stone cold. Like a putrid start that was, the season was done in the first 2 weeks. That was the end of the season. 2 weeks in. Just 2 or 3 starts from Luzardo, and the season was already cooked. So pitching under those conditions is tricky. The Marlins struggle to find their groove, I think, early on. It's fair to say Skips managed to keep them going. He's re-energized them, actually. And some of these vets being moved and the opportunities being created has re-energized the Marlins, led by Xavier Edwards. I'm going to talk about him later on. But from a Peter Bendix perspective, very intriguing offseason now with Luzardo. We've heard about Sandy, thinking about when could Sandy be moved? Will he be moved? Could he be moved before, this offseason, before he comes back to pitch? Most of the feedback around, we turn to Craig Mish as always. What's Craig Mish saying? I don't expect Sandy to be moved before the season. He could be moved later in the year, but I think they're going to want to rebuild the value. And I think that's going to be the situation for Luzardo. Frankly, I think maybe the Marlins were gun shy with Luzardo in the offseason, but the season got going. I think they then thought, okay, we're definitely rebooting. We're definitely rebuilding. No more eye on the future, eye on the present. Present's gone. We're going to reboot. And Luzardo's going to be part of that because he's in ARB. As the business model says, arbitration guys, you're in potential to be moved. So Luzardo not being healthy at the deadline, I think, was a huge blow. However, I spoke about it on the show at the time. They were able to get value out of Trevor Rogers that I'm not certain they would have done if Luzardo was healthy. They may have got a better package for Luzardo, but I do think maybe that injury maybe helped them in some ways to maximize Trevor Rogers' value. Potentially, I don't know. But nevertheless, it's a very intriguing offseason for Peter Bendix, for Luzardo. But if it was me, seeing what we saw at the deadline, seeing what we're likely to see next year in 25, and that the Marlins on-field product is not going to be competitive to a point of they're not going to be, in the playoff hunt is in all likelihood. I hope we're surprised. I hope that isn't what we see. I hope that the Marlins find the special sauce. Again, more about special sauce later on. I hope they find it. Imagine if they come out of the chute hot. then it's different. But most likely they won't. Most likely the talent won't be quite there. And so I feel like the most likely situation is Luzardo is a trade deadline candidate for the Marlins. But the question for them, and this is the challenge they now face, is can they keep him healthy until then? That's going to be the key question with Luzardo. There's too many injuries. There's too many injuries across the game. And so it's almost like who's available at the deadline? And that's, who's selling and who's available. You start to kind of get those narrow filters on, and that's where you end up with Trevor Rogers. That's how you can maximize Trevor Rogers. Who's healthy and who's selling? Great. Trevor Rogers will take him. So very, very intriguing. I don't think Luzardo now is going to be moved this offseason. I think the Marlins may do the same as with Sandy. Get him back in, rebuild the value, prove the health, and go from there. Let's talk about on-field right after this ad. I want to talk about Jesus Sanchez specifically with an absolute blast. A major league long of 480 this season. I also want to talk about Will Manso and Craig Mish with some off-field interviews as well. So tons to get into here on a Tuesday Locked on Marlins. Before we do that, firstly, let's let you know about our good friends over at Supply House. And you can get supplies from the site that's made for the skilled trades, SupplyHouse.com. SupplyHouse.com is the reliable way to order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Shop a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands and get your order delivered right to your door with fast shipping from coast to coast. Need help with an order? No problem. Get expert support and industry-leading service from the friendliest folks in the business and talk to a real person every time. Pros in the skilled trades can get a competitive edge by joining SupplyHouse.com's free Trade Master program. Every Trade Master gets access to a dedicated phone line, free shipping and discounts on every single order. Join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free membership at SupplyHouse.com/TM. TM for Trade Master, by the way. And order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from anywhere with just a few clicks at SupplyHouse.com. All right, guys, welcome back to Locked on Marlins on Tuesday, the 6th of August with me, Peter Pratt. We have spoken about Jesus Luzardo. His year's done. He's done. 66 innings is all the Marlins can get out of Jesus Luzardo. 66, relatively below par by his standard innings. Career high in innings last year. Went all the way. Was stunning. Stunning campaign. Unfortunately, the regression really hit badly. Bad news for the Marlins. Bad news for the restocking of the farm. There's still an asset there. There's, it's the value isn't quite what it will be. It would have been in last offseason, but they couldn't find a deal. They couldn't get a deal done. There was no value at the deadline. And so we go again. When will he be moved? I don't know. Will he be extended? Absolutely not. So we'll see if Jesus Luzardo throws again for the Marlins. I think he will. I think Sandy will. And I think the Marlins are going to be potentially moving to, when you talk about what they did at the deadline this time, quantity over quality. I think they're going to be seeking significant quality in their next big moves with those pitchers, Sandy Alcantara and Jesus Luzardo. And it's a matter of time, guys. For both of them, it's a matter of time. That's the business model, and that's what we're going to see. Let's briefly touch on some other news and nuggets from our good friends across the media. I want to start firstly with Craig Mish talking about the attendance thing, and this has kind of got a bit of traction on Twitter recently, like today and yesterday, where he was asked around the attendance. And we have this conversation every year. Normally, I remember a few seasons ago, Takes was on the show and we talked about attendances. And he lives in the States and I don't. I live in England. So it's very hard for me to give, a true opinion of this. So I need to lean on people. And Takes gave a great account. We have this conversation over and over. Craig Mish talking about the attendance issues with the Marlins and the fact that they've struggled to find the secret sauce, even called out that when Stanton had his MVP campaign, 60 home runs, etc., that even then the Marlins fans wouldn't show up. I've thought about this topic for a long time, many years, and tried to work it out. But I've come to the simplest of conclusions. Everyone's got excuses around game start times, the ballpark locations, whatever it might be, lack of public transport, parking, you name it. The excuses galore. The true reason that the Marlins have struggled is that they haven't been able to have consistently a team that's been in a playoff hunt or in multiple playoff appearances in a row. That's the problem. It's pretty simple. There's no secret sauce. There's no secret. And there's no need for secret sauce. We know what the problem is. It's very black and white for me. It's so black and white that you look across town and you see the Panthers, and it's so black and white and obvious. The Panthers have been in the same situation as the Marlins historically. Couldn't give tickets away. Even if they're free, they wouldn't come. Not in the mix. Granted, I haven't followed the Panthers closely. Not in the mix, but all of a sudden, you piece it together, you invest, you have a sustained contender, and now they're the hottest ticket in town. That's how the Miami market works. Miami market is not going to buy into rebuild products. And unfortunately for the Marlins, this product has been subpar on the field too consistently. It's been consistently subpar, which is exactly opposite to what the market needs. So we can talk about secret sauce all we want. I think Craig knows this. I think the Marlins know. I think everyone knows it. And frankly, Peter Bendix's vision aligns exactly to this. Peter Bendix is talking about sustained success. I want to see the Marlins in the postseason year after year after year. And his model, his suggestion, his strategy is to deliver that. That's his plan. And to do that, it's a long-term plan. And that's segueing away from Craig Mish's comments. And I think everyone knows that situation now, in my opinion anyway. I mean, let me know. Let me know your thoughts. What am I missing? Again, don't give me excuses. What am I missing? But I'm looking at the Panthers. I've seen how that fan base has grown. And I've seen other teams and organizations, and I've seen how that works in South Florida. And it can work for the Marlins, but they've just never given themselves the opportunity to make that happen, because all they have is 1 year spikes and then a rebuild follows. 1 year rebuild. That's not how it works in the Miami market, in the South Florida market. It isn't. You have to be in the hunt 3 to 5 years in a row. And that's what Peter Bendix is trying to deliver. So, again, let me know your thoughts. What am I missing, if anything? Let's talk about Will Manso, because firstly, I am delighted that Will Manso spent some time with Peter Bendix one-on-one, not in a media scrum, one-on-one. When they look at Will Manso and the way he's been talking about on Twitter, I think it's been fair. I think he's, he's voicing some, there's no rose-tinted glasses there. I think he's calling a lot of things what they are. And so I was delighted that he got some time with Peter Bendix. He's posted the full show, the full interview on YouTube. Recommend you go and listen to it. He asked some very pointed questions, other types of questions that the fans want to hear asked. What's the plan? Are you going to extend anyone? What do you say to the fan base? What happened this year? Playoff season, what happened this year? All of the questions that you wanted to ask have been asked and answered by Peter Bendix. And he does a good job in some ways of sharing information. Thing is, I just want to call out, by the way, Peter Bendix, he's in a tough situation. It's a very, very tough situation because, with politicians and front office people and all this stuff, like, they often can't truly say what they think in public. And that's the challenge. So when you start saying things that, are lies, maybe, or that you don't truly believe it, you then start to kind of lose. There's a distrust that's created with that within a public persona. And I think Peter Bendix has got a bit of that going on, where he has to say what he has to say. And what I'm pointing to specifically is, well, we thought a full year of Berger and Bell was going to be enough. Why didn't you make any acquisitions, serious moves to supplement this team, Peter Bendix. Well, we thought Berger and Bell were enough. We identified Tim Anderson and thought he could be enough. I think we all know. So, actually, let me go back. If that's Peter Bendix's true analysis, then we're in big trouble. Big trouble. If he truly believes that and believed it, then I think this is going to go wrong. But the point I'm trying to make here is Bendix doesn't believe that. He doesn't believe that, but he had to say it. And he's still having to say it. This is what happens when you become a politician. You start saying things that you don't believe in, but you then have to stick with them. Berger and Bell and Anderson, that should be enough. That should be good. He doesn't believe that, but he's still got to say it. And that's the problem. That creates this distrust feeling. People don't trust. If you tell lies straight to people's faces, they're not going to trust you. But we're starting to see more and more. We know the season's cooked. And Peter Bendix called it out, and that's why I want to talk about on the show as well, that, listen, he couldn't have foreseen no Sandy, no Yuri. I mean, he could have foreseen no Sandy, but no Sandy, no Yuri, no Luzardo for most of the year, no Brax. 4 of your top guys, 100 innings combined. The Marlins aren't going to be competitive, no matter what the offense looks like, no matter if they re-signed Hoysala. They're not. So they probably lucked out in some ways that they didn't invest and that they just stood pat. They lucked out in some ways in that aspect, and all they committed to was Tim Anderson because they could easily move on from him. But this is where you have a bit of an issue with the front office. But what we did see then a little bit later on was like something that popped out I thought was very interesting, where he talked about and alluded to, this is a long-term plan. And I think that's the one thing that nags away and has kind of maybe nagged away at us as fans. And again, this is tricky to navigate because there's things in play here that links to the attendance, being that Peter Bendix can't really come out and say, I think we're going to be bad for 3 seasons. And when I say bad, I mean 70 or less wins. But I think that's what he thinks is the likelihood. He can't say that, though, because on the other flip side, you've now got, season ticket promotions going out. Come and rejoin as a Marlins member. Come and re-sign with us. And the incentive to do that is you're going to get priority access to WBC tickets. There you go. That's the carrot. That's the carrot. The stick is you got to pay to go and watch the Marlins. That's probably going to be a stick for the next few years because they're not competitive. They're not going to be competitive. And that's, again, the problem. You can't sell uncompetitive sports products to people in Miami. They're just not going to buy them. They're not going to buy them. But I thought a great interview from Will Manso. And the thing that stood out, like I mentioned, was the fact that it's being disciplined in the long term. And this is a long-term plan. And it's going to take multiple years. And I think we're all switched on enough to know that now. I think we all get it. You can't just plumb in, Davison de los Santos and it's going to magically change everything. It's not. You can't just plumb in Augustin Ramirez and that's going to magically change it. And the problem we're going to face is, from a rotation perspective, we've seen how that impacted the team this year, having no Sandy, no Yuri, no Luzardo, no Brax. Well, soon enough, probably 50% of them guys are going to be traded. And then who's going to be stepping into that? This is it. They've got some prospects coming down the chute, no doubt about it, but they're a couple of years away. So it's going to be another couple of, this is a long-term rebuild for the Marlins. This isn't, we're going to spin it back around in 25. Did talk about how Bruce is desperate to win, wants to win, and I get it. I don't think Bendix doesn't want to win. I just think, and I think the frustration maybe that I felt anyway, is that we were playing politics. We were playing politics early, and some of the things he was saying, it was pretty clear they just weren't true. And I just don't like that. I think people just wanted honesty and transparency, and I know you don't always get that from, the front office. There's no reason to be fully open and transparent. But I feel like we got off on the wrong foot, where we're playing politics already. The words don't meet the actions. And then later down the line, then you start to see the plan. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. But very interesting interview. Go and check it out. Right, we're going to hit the final ads. I'm going to talk about Xavier Edwards for at least 5 minutes because he deserves it. What an absolute stud. Before we do that, let's talk about our good friends over at FanDuel. Yes, sir. And I love sports and I love them so much. I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down and we get fewer games, the sports aren't sporting like I want them to. FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone, every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. All right, guys, final segment here with me, Peter Pratt. Thanks for making Locked On Marlins your first listen. It's Tuesday, the 6th of August. And guys, finally, we have to talk about Xavier Edwards. There was no emergency podcast, an oversight from my perspective. But Xavier Edwards, with the second Marlins cycle, straight off the first one last season by Luis Arias, Xavier Edwards has been absolutely unreal since he's been back up in the big leagues this year. Reminder, he didn't start the season with the Marlins, had a foot issue that seemed to drag on all the way through spring into the early part of the campaign. But Luis Arias moved, then Xavier Edwards, played his, got his reps in and got promoted. Since then, guys, this is under the radar. These numbers are under the radar at this point. No one's talking about Xavier Edwards, and they should be. In 2024, since he's been recalled, in 137 plate appearances, Xavier Edwards is hitting 383. 383. An OBP of 456, slug 470, an OPS of 926. Xavier Edwards is absolutely unreal. When we go and look at our batting champ, former darling Luis Arias, let's see what he's doing this year. Arias in 2024, he's regressed a bit in some ways. He's hitting 305, a 337 OBP, slugging 379, his 716 OPS. Xavier Edwards, reminder on his OPS, is 926. Only one home run, but 12 stolen bags as well for Xavier Edwards. Frankly, at this point, you go and look at the savant bubbles as well. It's very, very interesting. The profiles are super similar on savant anyway, with expected batting average, obviously like bright red for Arias, the launch angle sweet spot percentage bright red, squared up percentage bright red, whiff K, everything's bright red. The main differences though for Xavier Edwards specifically is where Luis Arias' his walk percentage is the 4th percentile. Doesn't take enough walks. For the type of hitter he is, he doesn't take enough walks. And the chase percentage is the 12th percentile. For Xavier Edwards, chase percentage, I'm guessing because I can't see it specifically, let's say he's the 95th percentile. Walk percentage, he's even probably higher than that. So Xavier Edwards has almost an identical offensive profile when he's swinging the bat as Luis Arias. But he doesn't chase anywhere near as often, and his walk percentage is, frankly, at the complete opposite end of the scale. When you then consider the defensive aspect, obviously Xavier Edwards a far superior defender. When you then consider the sprint speed, the running aspect, and the stolen bases, again, Xavier Edwards an above average runner as well. So Xavier Edwards somehow is flying under the radar across Major League Baseball. No one knows what this guy's doing. No one knows how good he's been. The fact that he, arises at, okay, he's only had 100 and what's he had? Sorry, guys, he's only had 137 plate appearances. So relatively small sample versus, 474 of Arias this season, 617 plate appearances the season before. I get it. But from what we've seen here from Xavier Edwards, he is special. He is special, and he can do it all. He's been super solid at shortstop. He's got exactly the same profile as Arias, and we've seen how effective that's been. But he's also got speed, and he can also take a walk. He's a better version. Let me say that again. Xavier Edwards is a better, more rounded version of Luis Arias. He's not just a glorified singles hitter. He takes a walk. He can play shortstop, and he can run. And from a Marlins perspective, he's on league minimum. The other question you're probably asking, maybe people tune into the show, that aren't Marlins fans. That does happen, unbelievably. Thinking, yeah, Xavier Edwards, where did the Marlins get him from? Yeah, reminder, the Marlins got him from the Rays. Peter Bendix traded Xavier Edwards from the Rays to the Marlins in what might be one of the worst trades ever, but it's worked out for him. He's with the Marlins now. I get it. The Rays got some pieces back there I think they liked anyway, so I'm over-exaggerating that. But, from what we're seeing here, considering Luis Arias has been described as like a generational hitter in terms of what he does and what Xavier Edwards has done to start his Marlins career, boy, oh boy, this is extremely exciting. The other note that we haven't spoke about on this show is the fact that Xavier Edwards, getting confused now, Xavier Edwards was in discussion as part of a trade package by Kim Ang, by the way, last deadline, when they were looking to do something at third base. The Marlins obviously ended up acquiring Jake Burger. But also available and rumored was Candelario from the Washington Nationals, who was having a good season. And by all accounts, in that conversation, that discussion, this was from Craig Mish, was that they were looking for Xavier Edwards back in that deal. Obviously, things look very different then. Kim Ang was running the show. The Marlins didn't have anyone at third base, and they had Luis Arias playing decent enough second base defense and basically the best hitter on the planet at that point. Luckily, that deal didn't go through. The Marlins move Luis Arias, maybe at the right time, get back multiple prospects. We'll see if they turn into anything. They don't save any money this year because they eat the dough. But by moving Arias, they end up getting multiple prospects and a better player. So that's a big tick in the Peter Bendix box. The negative to that I've already discussed, where if you truly believe that Berger and Bell and Tim Anderson were going to keep this offense afloat, then we've got some big problems as well. And again, let's not forget, he did trade Xavier Edwards away to the Marlins. But nevertheless, Xavier Edwards, it's going under the radar how well he has been doing for the Marlins. I believe his current on-base streak is 22 games. It's not just the contact, but it's also the walks. And when he's on base, he has the chance to steal as well. And like we said, we haven't spoken at all about his shortstop defense. A full season of Xavier Edwards. Now that is an enticing proposition, no doubt about it. And Will Manso got into this, just saying, listen, where you hit on these guys, where they're studs, do you have the money to spend? Do you have a way to commit to these guys, to build around them? Was the question. Peter Bendix's answer, case by case, as it would be, as it should be. But frankly, the business model doesn't really align to, big extensions for guys. So, whilst Bruce Sherman wants to win, Peter Bendix wants to win, I want to win, everyone wants the Marlins to succeed. Absolutely. I don't think it's going to be by heavily deviating away from the model that the Rays have employed, which is once you get to ARB, you move, replenish the farm. ARB, move, replenish the farm. Don't buy any player jerseys. Never buy a Marlins player jersey ever again. There's no point. It'll be defunct within a year or two. So never do that. I think we're all lined on that. Just buy a number with no name on the back, maybe. Maybe that's the way. All right, guys. We've run a few minutes over there, but wanted to give Xavier Edwards the love that he absolutely deserves and hasn't had from this show, from me specifically for some time. And he has been unreal. Again, it's hidden because the team stinks and no one's really paying attention, nationally. The national eyeballs were on Jesus Sanchez with a 480-foot home run. By the way, That is the longest home run by a Marlins player at Lone Depot ever. The longest ever was by a former Marlins player, Avisail Garcia, 485 from Avisail Garcia. So he still holds the record. It's still pretty crazy, that to me. And then Jesus Sanchez, now number 2 on the list. Guys, thanks for making Locked On Marlins your first listen. Let me know your thoughts. I've covered a lot there today, from Jesus Luzardo, the rotation, Peter Bendix, Craig Mish and his views on the attendance, and Xavier Edwards. Tons to get into. Let me in the comments your thoughts on all these topic areas. I'll be back tomorrow. I'll see you then.